Thanks for pressing play. This is Christopher. And man, I'm really excited that you're here for this conversation. You see, today, who we have with us is the legendary Sue Barsamian. And I love this woman. And I will tell you straight up, she's the single most effective executive I've ever seen or even heard of. Sue and I worked together well over 20 years ago, and we've been great friends ever since. And I admire and respect everything about Sue Barsamian. And today, Sue is literally one of the most sought after board members in Silicon Valley because of her incredible compass for results, for character, for quality, and her ability to produce results and inspire people. Her nickname is the Velvet Hammer because, man, she gets stuff done. But everybody somehow manages to love Sue. So just learning these things from Sue is incredible. And we talk about that stuff towards the end of our conversation. At the beginning of our conversation, we talk about the agentic future. As AI turns into agents and automations, we envision a world where the average CEO, the average C-level executive is managing more AI agents than they are people. So Sue and I talk about that. And specifically, what's the role of the board of directors in a world where CEOs and C-level executives have more bots as direct reports than people? And how do you govern a company from the board in a world where you have more bots than employees? Sue's insights here are incredible, and she gives some very powerful examples, including an example of a public company she's on the board of called Box.com. And then we wrap the conversation by talking about relationships. Sue is as hard driving, result producing, ass kicking executive as I have ever seen. And yet she's beloved, and she has multi-decade long relationships, people that started early in her career and worked with her throughout her career. So we talk about how to have legendary careers while kicking legendary ass at the same time. This is a very special episode with one of the most special people in Silicon Valley, the legendary Sue Barsamian. Let me start off by saying I really love you.
I love you too.
I'm so grateful you love me and that you still love me, because I could count 1,000 reasons why you might not love me anymore.
We go back a long way.
We really do. And and this is true for the vast majority of people I love. I respect and admire you so much.
Thank
Your
you.
career, I know who you are as a human being, as a person, as a mother, now as a grandmother. I know you, Sue Barsamian. And I tell people all the time, you are the single most effective executive I've ever seen. I've been in business almost 40 years. I don't know anybody more effective than you, and I'm not even sure who a close second is.
You always embarrass me by saying that, and I appreciate it. I will just remind you that 20 years ago, I worked for you, so I learned from the best.
Well, you working for me is the greatest fuck up the universe ever had. Because how it was not inverted, I'll never know. And it became very obvious to most people in the company very quickly. It's like, well, yeah, the loudmouth is interesting, but this gal over here seems to know where the hell things are and what's going on and has a budget and a plan.
We were a very good team.
Yes,
we totally were.
Legendary partnership.
Yeah.
And so obviously a lot's changed over those 20 years. And you have now become one of the most sought after board members in Silicon Valley, haven't you?
I am a board member in Silicon Valley. I'd like to think sought after.
Well, I know very sought after. And you were telling me two public and two private, is that right?
3 public, 3 private.
3 public and 3 private.
Yeah.
What are they? Can you say?
So on the public side, Box, which was my first public board, Gen Digital, which I joined when it was Symantec and Five9. And on the private side, Gainsight, customer success, Exactly, sales compensation, and Pangea cybersecurity, who we just sold to CrowdStrike.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah,
I hope it was a good outcome for everybody.
It was.
Excellent. Good work. So as you think about being a board member, you've made the transition from entrepreneur, marketing executive, engineering executive. Of course, you have an engineering background, analytical background, but you have the creative marketing. You have a hell of a background. And then you've made the transition from executive in charge of lots of shit to now board member. And of course, a board member's job is to provide guidance, provide insight, to listen, be a great advisor. And of course, the official role is governance. And so as you think about AI and the scenario that suggests, and this is what we believe is likely to happen, as we move from using AI to building agents to a collection of agents that some people now call automations, you can now imagine a situation where a CEO or any C-level executive is managing more agents or more automations than they are people. And we've seen major corporations like Microsoft and Apple and Google and NVIDIA say things like they anticipate being able to double or meaningfully increase revenue without increasing headcount. And the reason they think they can do that is we're moving to the agentic future. Okay, so with all of that said, A, does that resonate with you? And if it doesn't, where do you think what I just said might be off or you'd change? And then B, how do you think about governance in a world where we have all these agents running around and company leaders that you're supposed to be the governance backstop to now have all this AI running around?
Yeah. So first of all, let's start with the frame. Totally agree with the frame. We started with Gen AI, and that definitely made people more productive. That in and of itself didn't give you the ability to totally transform a company's workflow. And when you transform a company's business processes is when you really get breakthrough productivity. And now we're there with MCP, the agentic protocol, and everybody now coming out with these agentic frameworks tied with workflow and automation. And as exciting as that is, it comes with a whole new realm of governance questions and governance mandates. And so I actually had 2 board meetings this week, and we talked about this at both. And I'll use Box as an example because Box is also a vendor who does this for a living. Box is the content cloud, and now around the content cloud gives you the ability to, in a very low code, no code way, build agentic workflows. Box is also a company going AI first from the inside out. And so what they've done is they have certified every single employee on AI and on the use of their tools to build AI and agentic frameworks. They are doing things like running company-wide hackathons, totally company-wide, where everybody now is building agentic workflows. They had one last week. 2 of the top 10 winners were from the HR team. So this is not the R&D team creating all this stuff for the company. Now these tools are such that anybody can do it.
So I just want to make sure I fully understand. So they run these hackathons across all functions and domains, not just tech, not just software developers. And the most recent one, you're telling me that the HR folks beat the software development folks in building agentic AI, and they won the prize, not the engineers.
They were a group of the winners. I'm sure the R&D
Okay.
team also won. I don't want to misrepresent,
But what
the
you're
point is
saying,
the HR team won some awards, right?
right?
That's the point. This is easy. And then what Box does, and I'm actually sharing this now with the rest of my boards because I think this is the right approach. Then Box runs this through really a software development lifecycle approach where there's a committee that looks at the top submissions. There's a committee that looks at the effort required, the ability to execute, and the impact on the organization, and essentially signs off on which of these agents will be put into production. And they are tested and managed and monitored and measured with productivity metrics before they even go into production, just like a piece of software would be. And you and I, given what we did at Mercury, we're super familiar with how an SDLC works then and now. And so they're really putting these agentic frameworks through kind of a similar set of governance processes.
This is where the degree to which I'm a nerd gets really excited. So if you think back to our shared history at Mercury, of course, one of the big things that Mercury did was it allowed very sophisticated, high-end IT executives to monitor manage and observe. There's a term in the world that we come from called observability, right? All of the components in a data center and to manage them against a set of metrics, typically what are called SLAs, service level agreements. How available is the server? How available is the router? La, 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 blah, blah, blah. And so glad we're here. Are we moving to a world now where those sorts of paradigms of monitoring, management, observability of, let's just for lack of a better term, tech components are now central to governance, given agents are tech components?
Yeah, and given that most people are going to be running these agentic frameworks in a centralized cloud for exactly this reason. I mean, this is still early days, but most people are doing like an MCP cloud where they will host all these agents. And one of the things we can take advantage of at Box, because again, this is what Box does. So Box hosts all their content in Box, and that has all of the access control, permissions, security framework that you would expect. So we can watch for the exfiltration of data that should not be taken outside of the enterprise. We can watch from department when something happens that shouldn't be happening in terms of behavioral or just, an access control violation. And so what you want is you want all of that to extend to your agentic world, even though obviously the agentic world busts out of the enterprise, but you can still make sure that, even in the agentic world, that information is not crossing boundaries that it shouldn't be crossed, that information is redacted, like maybe you get part of it, but some of it is redacted, looking for PII, personal information in ways that security companies know how to do, but that now all has to be extended to the agentic world.
I mean, a simple one, if you think about, go back to HR and you think about HIPAA, and you think about the basic principle that healthcare information should be private and that nobody should be able to get your healthcare information unless you authorize it. Well, companies know certain things about people's healthcare.
Yeah, totally. It's a great example. Anything regulatory or compliance based,
Right.
the usual suspects in terms of regulated industries, financial, health and life sciences, absolute control is necessary / mandated for anything that goes agentic.
Right. So this morning I was talking to one of my two writing partners, Eddie, and he was saying how in this new agentic world, he would, quote, never want to be on a company's board because of the personal liability, because agents are spreading like hamsters. And how can you possibly take on the responsibility as a board member of saying these numbers are the right numbers and this company's behaving properly and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, when to your point, anybody can build agents and it can just happen willy-nilly very quickly. And so you're on 6 boards. That's a lot of personal liability through that lens. And you're on technology company boards who are arguably further along on agentic
Yeah.
than, Procter and Gamble or General Electric might be. And so
Yeah.
what advice would you have to other board members and or people looking at going on boards in a post agentic world?
Yeah. So look, it's a serious topic, definitely, and board members need to, and I would say are taking it very seriously. We spend a lot of time as board members in AI training ourselves and making sure that we are aware of AI. And then we look at the current governance framework. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is risk, right? And governance is a lot of managing risk. And so we look at whether this is something that is capable of being managed through the standard risk framework that comes through the audit committee, or particularly in the case of tech companies, do you formalize a technology committee? And, I'm on boards where we have a formal tech and cyber committee. And ultimately, risk still, the umbrella of risk is still the purview of the audit committee, but going deeper from both a cyber and a tech, including agents, is something that is very well placed in a tech committee. And the board, well, I don't want to say the board needs a tech committee. The board needs to make sure that it is assigned somewhere. A very logical thing to do is to form a tech committee, but some people do it as a subcommittee under audit. The important thing is you know who is doing it and you know what they're responsible and accountable for. And usually there's two sides of this. One, you're constantly briefed on the changing nature of the regulatory environment because now this is at both the national and at the state level. So you've got to stay abreast of what's changing and how do we need to change as a result of that. And then you review the framework and the operating dashboards that the company has deployed in terms of how to measure and manage this. And again, that's pretty standard in the governance framework for boards, but you've got to adapt that now to AI in the way that we've just talked about using the box example.
So now if I was a CEO and I was inviting you to come on my board, and one of the things I wanted you to help us look at was this topic. I look at you and I go, incredible tech career, cybersecurity, giant companies like HP, lots of startups. You've seen it upside and down, forwards and backwards. So I was inviting you to come on our board and maybe trying to convince you to lead my tech committee slash tech slash agentic governance work. What would you be asking me to think about, to look into, to put into place? CEO wanting to be on the leading edge of, let's just call it agentic governance for a lack of another term.
Yeah. It really goes back to some of the first principles, that we've discussed in terms of how are you going AI first, and how do you make that at the end of the day? I would say a marriage between a bottoms up initiative and a tops down governance framework. That's really the best, right? This isn't, the C-suite can't make a company AI first. They can hope for that, but at the end of the day, you've got to enable and empower everybody in the company to be excited about it and to be capable of doing it and to hold them accountable for doing it. And, that comes from the top. But then, kind of like Box and the hackathons, they dressed up in costumes. I mean, they made it fun. And it was something literally that everybody wanted to
Everybody loves
participate in.
costumes.
Everybody loves costumes. So then you get that bottoms up motion, and you get the people who are closest to the business processes, figuring out how to take those business processes and automate them, but also to make them better. Because what you see with Gen AI is it's capable of doing things not only in a better, faster, cheaper way than doing it purely with humans, but it's capable of doing things that humans couldn't do, particularly things that required the assimilation of such complex volumes of information that it was just not possible or tenable to do that. And so, this is why the combination of humans and agents is so great, because you've got the people that know not only the current business processes, but know ultimately the outcomes that you're after, and can, work with these agentic frameworks in order to come up with totally new and different ways of doing things other than just automating the legacy processes, which that's fair game, but you should go further than that.
Right. Is there anything else on this topic you would want to educate me about?
You seem pretty educated, so I'm excited about it. I feel like you're excited about it, with the caveat of, how do you make sure that, a phrase you used to use at Mercury, that the inmates don't run the asylum at some point, right? How do you make sure as a board?
It's every sci-fi movie ever, right?
Yeah.
The robots are now running the company, and away we go.
Exactly. So how do you make sure that you govern and control it? And look, I think the risks are real. I think if done right, the opportunity is off the charts. And what I see, and I do sit on tech boards, but I can say from the perspective of my boards, the companies are all over it. The boards are all over it. And, people are learning as they go. And part of the reason they're learning as they go is the models get better every 6 months,
Right.
right? Things are possible now that weren't possible a year ago. The agentic frameworks are now out and becoming
Very
real.
real. Yep.
But that, this is like what, 6 to 9 months old. So, and people are talking to each other and learning from each other in a way that I think is healthy. And we'll see how it goes.
Excellent. Now, switching topics, if I could, we've been doing a lot of work and a lot of writing lately, trying to capture as much as we can about lightning strikes. And I didn't know this was going to be such a hot topic, but it turns out it is. And, since you and I were doing them 20 years ago at Mercury, the thesis or the basis for doing them has gotten truer insofar as, back then we looked at it and said, look, yes, you have to keep the lights on marketing, of course. However, if we do that and then we think about product launches or other big things that we might do in a traditional way, we're never going to break through because there's so much noise in the system. Well, you and I were talking about this in the early 2000s when we created and then implemented the strike model at Mercury led by you. Well, those things about trying to rise above the noise are truer now by an order of magnitude than they were then. And yes, you still have to do lights on, keep the lights on. However, if you don't break out and make big noise a couple times a year as your primary focus, you're never going to stand out. And that's truer now than ever. And so as you think about, I assume you're like me, you don't know how, you can't count how many lightning strikes you've been involved with, right?
Lightning strikes and rolling thunder, right?
Yes.
They go together. Yeah.
And so maybe just start at a high level. How do you think about lightning strikes? Let's say I was a CMO or a CEO and I'd never done one before. And I came to you and I said, Sue, mother of lightning strikes, goddess of all greatness, tell me about lightning strikes. How do you think about it?
So, I kind of think of the what, the why, and the how, right? The what is exactly what you said. You are trying to break through a crowded marketplace and a very noisy digital landscape, right? Today it's digital. It's all pretty much all digital. And you're trying in the midst of that to break through and land your brand and your message with your target audience. Why are you trying to do that? Because you want to build awareness, you want to drive pipeline and close business. You also these days, because tech is moving so quickly, in order to do that, you have to incorporate a heavy degree of education into these lightning strikes and the rolling thunder. Because tech is moving so fast, people need to be educated before they buy. Now, the what, I actually got Janet Matsuda and Rod Lehman on the phone because they're still in it, right?
Recently you did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
A month
amazing.
ago.
I
Yeah,
haven't talked to Rod for forever. I'd love to reconnect with him. And with Janet, I'm hoping to do a podcast with her. I know what
you
she's
should.
doing now
You
for a
should.
living, and I could not
Yeah,
be more excited about her. And I
yeah,
want her to do exactly this if she's up for it.
yeah. No, and she's still an operator on a daily basis. And so, I think what she would tell you, which is what she told me, is look, the premise hasn't changed. The need has gotten only greater. What's changed is the tactics of how you do it and the tools, that a marketer has at their disposal really enable, I would say, two breakaway things today that we didn't have, which is personalization at scale, right? You can take a company, but the buying group within a company, and you can personalize content to everybody in the buying group and to that company. And you can do that through a variety of audience identification methods, but you can use curated AI content at scale in a way that you never could before, and you can take that much lower in your customer pyramid than you could in the
Right. I
past.
mean, I can remember meetings, you and I sitting there going through buying personas to help the marketing teams inform, because what we want to say to this type of persona is slightly different than that one, and la, la, la. So when we went
Yeah,
into a company and we're hitting up and down the org chart, that we're hitting with as much accuracy and precision and resonance with whoever it is we're targeting. Well, our ability to do that today is materially different than it was 20 years ago.
materially different. And it was it was constrained by the account-based marketing spend you had in the past, and now the doors had been blown off. But you should really bring, Janet or Rod on to kind of talk about the modern tool set that is now behind,
Great idea. Maybe they'll
a
both do
need
it
that
with
hits.
me.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
I had a blast getting on with them. But there's two other really important aspects of a lightning strike in my mind, in that it's a forcing function inside the company. And the forcing function inside the company, most companies are on a journey. You start out as a one product shop, kind of like we did at Mercury. We were application testers, and then pretty soon we're a 4-pillar multi-product platform company moving up the stack and suddenly interesting to the CIO. And, the complexity of all of these products and BUs gets to be quite significant. And a lightning strike is a way to make sure that everything is customer back, that you're not talking speeds and feeds. You prioritize, right? Every last product doesn't get airtime, because lightning strikes aren't about product first. They're about customer problem first. And it really does force the solution marketing angle. And you refresh all your content. The company gets ready like it's going to a competition, and you enable the entire company. And and I'll give you credit for this. The journey we were on when we did these lightning strikes, let's say every 6 months, was we were moving from selling to, application testers that were, 4 levels down in the IT organization, to, over the course of a couple of years, selling to the CIO. And you had to change the mojo of the company from the inside out. And you did that very effectively through lightning strikes. You had to reprogram the company to be, be what we want to be. And I think we did that. I think we did that in a hugely successful way. And lightning strikes, I mean, you remember we used to have employee giveaways alongside the customer giveaways. It was as important to get the employees riled up and educated about, we're not that company we were 6 months ago now. We've moved on and we're moving up the stack. And it's incredibly invigorating, but you have to pay as much attention inside as you do out. If I look at what we learned at Mercury.
Is it wrong for a very happily married man to love a woman he's not married to? Amen.
Preaching to the choir.
Amen, sister. Yeah, for sure. And the other part about this that certainly I could never have foreseen in the beginning when we started all this was, inside a company, the only sort of milestones you really have are the ends of quarters. And the ends of quarters feel very much like a financial outcome, a financial happening. And even if you're not public, most companies make some kind of announcement at the end of the quarter and so forth. And by definition, of course, they're very, very financially oriented, which is great. Most of us are motivated by things, not just money, but by other things. And so in the absence of strikes, there's no sense of momentum inside the company necessarily, particularly as the company grows. When it's a small group of people, that's one thing. Somebody closes a new customer, or we develop a new feature or product. Oh yeah. But as the company grows past a certain number, that's harder and harder for a larger group to celebrate. And so those milestones of momentum, if I could call them that, are less. Strikes then become that internally. 2 or 3 times a year, we're going to do something really big, and it's going to be something internal. And to your point on the box stuff with the costumes and what we used to do at Mercury, it's a celebration of something inside the company.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're fucking doing this. We're going for it. We shipped this new thing. We did this incredible conference. We have this incredible research. We published amazing blueprint for the future of our category. Whatever the thing is, right? But it's this. And so several times a year, everybody sort of lifts up and has this moment, and it's sort of, there's this build into it, and there's this sort of excitement that lives after it, like I don't know, a semi-annual
But I think
baby
what you did,
shower
yeah.
or holiday or something.
Yeah. But see, I think the way you just described it is the difference between a strike and a launch, right? So companies do product launches. All companies, right? All companies could say, they could listen to us talking about this and they could say, oh, well, I do that, right? I do that. I go to my user conference every year and I launch all my stuff, right? And they do, right? You kind of have to if you want to be in business. I think the difference is really the how and the level to which you are doing something that is evolving the category, the definition of the category as a proxy for solving a customer problem, evolving the customers in their line of thinking, and thus evolving the company to an aspirational position that the company has not been in. And that is very different. And you do this for a living. You really always have. You think in categories, the creation of categories, because categories don't stay static. As soon as you create it, it's disrupted and you've got to extend it and expand it. There's a lot of art and there's a lot of science in how you continue to extend and expand your category so that you continue to extend and expand your TAM. But you can't just decide to do it in a way that fits with your product portfolio. You have to do it in a way that fits with the customer's requirements and the customer's needs. And that's hard. So to do this in a customer back way, I think is the art of a true lightning strike. I wouldn't want people to hear us talk about this and to think, oh, that's just a biannual product launch. Does he agree?
This is Bean, and he agrees. He's a cat, but he identifies as a dog, just so you know. And
Of course. He
it's
lives in Santa Cruz.
exactly, and it's a little warm here today, so I left the studio door open, and the studio's upstairs, and he was downstairs playing with the hens because he watches over the hens. We have 5 hens,
Yeah,
and
I
he
know.
cares about them like he's their protector. Remarkable. Anyway, so yeah, he just walked up the stairs and came over to say hi because he loves hanging out. He loves man shit. This studio is a man spot. And like whenever I have
Yeah.
dudes over watching football or any of that, or whenever we're fixing stuff or there's tools or guys with trucks around, any of that stuff, he loves all that stuff.
And he loves lightning strikes. That's good to
And he
know.
loves lightning strikes because they paid for a lot of dog food for him.
Yes, they did.
The other part about this that I could never have known when we started down this path together, Sue, is how the CEO and the CPO could use strikes as a forcing function to drive productivity in product development and engineering. Because say, hey, listen, we're going to be announcing this. We want to ship this. We want, doing this on October 15th, and you better be ready or not, right? And so maybe touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that has changed from when we started doing lightning strikes because, in those days, software was, it was the beginning of the cloud, decades, but there was still a lot of software on-prem and you couldn't announce something that wasn't going to GA within 90 days, right? So that held them hard and fast to, to their deliverables. Now that has changed dramatically with cloud, almost a continuous delivery model, but also with a recurring revenue model. You don't, you're not so legally constrained about, I can't tell you about something that is not shipping in the software today, right? That has relaxed a lot because they're signing up to an annual recurring model. So, but all companies still have some kind of a deadline that says if it's not coming out within 6-9 months, it's not making it into this window. And that is a great forcing function, even if it's a little bit longer than the 90 days that it was when you and I did it.
Right. Is there anything else on strikes we should touch on, Sue?
Well, I think your last point, which is just it's this is not something driven by the marketing department. This is a company wide initiative. It takes the whole company to pull it off, and it's really top down sponsorship, but you get that bottoms up engagement, which is really what makes it fun and amazing.
So maybe let's play with this one a little bit. You and I did a whole bunch of strikes together at Mercury, and I think, you tell me, I think we were pretty successful, even though we were both in marketing, of making them company events, not marketing events. And let's face it, you were in charge. And so if you're the head of marketing and you're in charge of the strike and you know this can't be a marketing event. If it is, we're dead on arrival. How do you, Sue Barsamian, become that company-wide enterprise executive that is equally respected in sales, marketing, support, engineering, finance? Like, you were as respected or more respected than virtually any other executive in our company. And when you stood up and said, this is what we are doing, everybody knew you weren't talking about the marketing department. And so how does
Yeah.
someone elevate themselves regardless of where they are in the organization, and specifically if they're in marketing, because that can be a bit of a scarlet letter, and make this a true company strike?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And if you remember, we had what we called the go to market framework, right? It wasn't the marketing framework, it was the go to market framework.
Canon.
And the
The
Canon, right? It
Canon.
was the Canon. And the Canon essentially showed how the entire company had a role to play in terms of how we went to market. And then at the center of the Canon were the playbooks that defined how you were going to take the combination of products that you had in your portfolio, wrap them into solutions and messaging, and prioritize them in a land expand way, right? We had some products that were tier A, we had some products that were tier C. You get something very different if you're an A than you're a C, and you institutionalize that, and everybody has a role. So the enablement team is enabling around this. The sales team is selling around this. You're measuring what's in people's pipeline based on how it aligns to the things we say we do and are going to focus on, not something they've decided our product can do for a use case that we really haven't tested and don't have all the company-wide support for. So, this is the way that you get more through the system with less friction. And I think good sales leaders see that, good marketing leaders see it. R&D leaders learn it, and product leaders learn it when they realize that not all products are created equal.
Yes. Now, look, I know I don't have you forever, although I wish I did. But as you're talking, a tangential thought occurred to me. I was just sitting here going, God damn it, I love Sue Barsamian. You're so legendary. And then as you're talking, I'm thinking about you and your career and your relationships. And best I can tell, Sue, you're as legendary as anybody I've ever met at building, maintaining over decades, many decades, legendary relationships. You're beloved by virtually everybody, with, I doubt, many exceptions, of people who ever worked with you, for you, around you. So just tell me a little bit about being so legendary that everybody loves you. And at the same time, you're the velvet hammer. Anybody, myself included, on the wrong end of the Sioux Olympics was going to get it, because not getting the puck to go in the net and the red light to go on around you is a very bad thing. And yet you're this velvet hammer. Everybody likes you, but you're fucking a maniac about results. So maybe just tell me a little bit about how you do that, how you be a velvet
Well,
hammer and be loved.
look, working with great people is job one. And, you've got to make sure as you join teams and as you build teams, they don't all have to be alike. I like diversity on all aspects, right? I like all different types of sizes and shapes and personalities, but they have to be winners at the end of the day. And you've got to have people who want to win. And, look, you learn over time. I have been called the velvet hammer, and you learn over time how to balance that, right? We slept in the office many nights, and yet we got legendary things done. Now you can't do that all the time. And you also have to give people license to not pretend they need to go home and go to a soccer game. And, and we always had a very family oriented culture, but people worked hard. And I would say that we all, me included, working for you, I think we all accelerated our learning curve and our careers because of the environment that we were in. I think we created a lot of legendary executives through this period of time, and it wasn't
Look at
easy,
how many
but
CEOs and CMOs and
yeah,
UFOs we created.
yeah,
It's hard to count them all. And
yeah. And
every
you
single
see,
person I know from Mercury who's successful, every single one of them makes me so fucking happy.
yeah, yeah. And you see that in all the great companies, right? They spawn the orbit, the blast radius of
It's
of the
huge.
companies
The
is
Mercury
huge.
halo
And
exists today.
yeah, yeah. And so super proud of that. And I have time now to stay in better touch with all those people than I did when I had a day job. And to me, it's one of the blessings of being in tech and the blessings of being, at least for part of my time living in Silicon Valley, which I still do, is, you can just drive around within 15 minutes and see so many people. And I just love it.
Yeah. Well, you're a master at it. Is there anything else, Sue Barsamian? I know you got to go.
No, thank you. It's always a
I couldn't
pleasure.
adore you more.
Likewise.
God
Thank you,
bless you, Sue
Christopher.
Barsamian. Thank you so much.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.